32 My Girl's Generation. Kim, Jinmi. I watched a movie called My Girl's Generation with my high school classmates whom I had not seen in a long time. It's a foreign film, and it's a story about a woman her age reminiscing about her youth. Thanks to film, I also decided to reminisce about my girl's generation. Like the main character in the movie, I didn't think I was that pretty, but in fact, back when I was in school, kids who were interested in their looks were considered bad girls. We didn't make school uniforms to fit snugly like girls these days, and we didn't cut skirts to the thighs. We wear a school uniform for all 3 years, so we wear a very large uniform and wear it loosely in the first year. In second grade, we wore it right. In third grade, it seemed a little tight, and the length of the skirt had to cover the knees. The condition of the hair was also not to exceed 2 centimeters below the ears. The teachers in charge checked the length of our hair every day, and the long-haired students were sheared as if it was natural. I too was a victim of scissoring, but I had no choice but to cut my hair short in the middle of the back of my hair. The skirt was also plentiful, so now that I think about it, it was an unstylish look. Still, we were all so rustic, so no one dared to say anything about our clothes or the shape of our hair. We were such a gentle sheep. And unlike in the movie, My Girl's Generation. In other words, none of the students in our high school had a boyfriend. A movie is just a movie. I can't know all the 800 or so in detail. Still, it was unimaginable that we were dating when we were girls' generation. No students are interested. We went to school at 7 in the morning and left at 10 at night. People seemed to be asking if we didn't go to an academy, but private tutoring was prohibited when we were little girls, so we couldn't take private tutoring or private academy classes. If caught, criminal penalties were imposed. So, everyone studied equally at school. Of course, there was no food. We packed 2 lunch boxes and went. At lunchtime and dinnertime, each person ate their own packed lunch, and the gap between the rich and the poor was very large in the lunchbox side dishes. My family was not very wealthy, but we valued eating, so the side dishes for my lunch boxes were varied. My classmates ate together and shared the side dishes they had packed, but my side dishes were so popular that I didn't have enough to eat. My side dish box is so huge that there are so many other students, so the problem was that we thought we could eat it. In fact, it was because mother provided 2 side dishes for lunch and dinner in one large side dish box, but after lunch, there was no side dish to eat for dinner. My classmates then told me to eat their side dishes, but in fact, I was upset because I had nothing to eat for them. Not for a day or 2, but for 3 years, I felt like I was being deprived of side dishes. Kids these days have lunch at school, so how happy are they that mothers don't have the trouble of waking up early in the morning to pack their kids' lunches, and students don't feel the gap between the rich and the poor? The diet is well prepared by a nutritionist, and the distribution of nutrients is accurate and the parents and students are very happy. But you don't seem to know that. But when I think about it now, when I was in girls' generation, there was no private education, so there was no gap between the rich and the poor. We concentrated on school lessons, and the teachers taught hard. What I learned at school is reflected in the exam, and my school did not fall behind in the national mock exams. In particular, our school had the highest level of Korean language proficiency in the country, and at that school, I received the first grade in Korean. After all, the language score was the best. Korean language, modern literature, and classical literature were all ranked first place. I never studied for an exam or study Korean, but the conclusion is that our Korean language teacher taught me well. At school, the Korean language ranked first in the country, so it seemed that he was rewarded by a group of Korean language teachers. If students now say that they don't need private education, they just have to study hard at school, how many people would really like to hear that? My friends and their children were often forced into the private education market. After watching the movie, I asked my friend, "Didn't we have private education? That's why we only went to provincial universities, didn't we?" "Well, That's right. So, did your son go to a famous university in Seoul? No. But the local national medical school sent it. Yes. Went to medical school. Is your son a scholarship student? I really don't have anything to say. Your sons worked hard for private education and you sent both of your sons as scholarship students to medical school, so it is true that you did well in your children's education. Another friend's son also went to medical school, Oriental Medicine College. Went to veterinary school. All of my classmates have sons in medical school. The other friend, who has only 2 daughters, went to an ordinary provincial university, attended a college for a year, stayed in Agosawan to study civil servants, and became a 9th grade civil servant in 1 year. Is you a civil servant at the age of 20? The retirement age is long, but your daughter will receive a huge amount of allowances, bonuses, and civil servant pensions. Isn't the highest salary for civil servants? Of course. Since the retirement age for civil servants has been extended, the pension will be huge for 50 years of service. Her salary is also high, so that must be more than any other large corporation. Among the civil servants with my daughter, there is an aunt in her 50s, and even though she is getting older and taking civil service exams, the starting salary for civil servants is only a little bit. My daughter will receive a lot of money when she is that age, and she became a civil servant in her 50s, so she stays there for about 10 years. When she retires, her pension will be very small. At that age, I don't know why civil servants do it. But at that age, there was no other place to get a job, so she must have taken the civil service exam, right? When I was in girls' generation, there was a time when no one would become a civil servant. At that time, my father asked me to take the civil service exam like that, but even then, I didn't want to hear that. Actually, back in those days, large corporations took all the graduates right away. No one ever wanted to be a civil servant. At that time, children who passed the civil service exam, which were passed only by exams, entered. Now they are making a good living because their salaries are so high. All the children employed by large corporations retired in their 40s. Except for those who became executives. Yes. In the long run, civil servants were better than large corporations. But when people in their 20s, they don't think about the 50s or 60s. Of course. Looking at the line, I preferred large corporations to civil servants. Your husband also goes to Samsung Electronics, right? Yes. My groom. He works for Samsung Electronics. But even when he turns 60, he still goes to work. He's a executive. Yes. Your husband is able. No, I am prettier. Your groom. I guess he did well in his studies when he was a boy. Of course. He was first place in the whole school, but he couldn't go to Seoul because his family was poor. In all likelihood, all sons who was good at studying were sent to Seoul, but how poor was he? My in-laws farm in the village, and the land is the landlord's, and they farm as tenant farmers. It really just melted in their mouth. Such. The land price has risen tremendously now. If they had that land, they could have taken their fortune even if they only farmed. Also, those who were poor in the past are still poor now. Of course. Even if my husband gets a lot of salaries while working for a large company, the cost of living at his in-laws, brother-in-law, sister-in-law's wedding fund, housing funds. I don't have anything left in my hands. I had to make money on my own. Yes. Still, who would have known that we would live here when we were girls' generation? Of course. When I was in girls' generation, I never dreamed that I would live like this. I was just a docile lamb who read a lot, tried and wrote a lot, worked hard at school, and listened to the teachers. The alumni send their children to school and work, and enjoy a leisurely life. Actually, they worked hard to raise my children, but now it's time to enjoy their leisure life. How hard was it to grow up? Yes. Bye. It's really been a few years since we've seen each other and we're out of trouble. See you again in a few years. Yes. Bye. After a short vacation, I returned to my current home. My current address is Bodha Hermitage, where nuns live, attached to Tongdo Temple under Yongchuk Mountain.